Welcome to the Rural Way Podcast, practical business and leadership conversations for small town living. I'm your host, Tracy Schira-Parker, and this is where we get to dig into working hard, showing up, and chasing big dreams from farmyards and small towns. So if you're building a business and a life where the pace is slower, you already know things are different. We don't have the same resources, margins, or risks, and this podcast is where we close that gap. We talk strategy that works, living a lifestyle we love, and staying true to our roots. So if you're ready, let's get at it. Welcome to the very first episode of The Rural Way. My name is Tracy Schira-Parker, and this is my new podcast. I'm really excited about this new platform. I'm excited about the new brand and the new name, and I'm not so excited about having to go on YouTube, but I know that that's the way podcasting is going and that most people are doing both platforms. So I'm doing a YouTube and I'm also doing the traditional podcast. So if you are listening on the regular podcast platforms where you're used to hearing me, this is new. Go over to, I'll put the link in the show notes, but I have a new YouTube. And so if you're watching on YouTube, welcome. This is brand new for me. And while I've done many different, I used to have a show on Facebook in a Facebook group called Grit and Grace with Tracy. And it was, I think I did happy hour, Friday happy hour or something like that. I did it for a long time, like 4 or 5 years, but I have not done video in a very long time, at least 3 years. So this is new, but I am very excited to have this as my new podcast, new platform, and new conversations. So for those of you who have seen me on the Grit and Grace with Tracy podcast, that podcast is now done. And I've been doing that since about 2018. So a long time, off and on. I think there's like 72 episodes or something like that. But Grit and Grace came from a place where I remember feeling this calling to start a podcast. And I didn't know what I should call it. I didn't know what it was going to be about. I was like, where does this fit into my business model as a consultant? And so then I was driving one day, probably hauling kids around to ball, and I remember the name coming to me, Grit and Grace, because that was kind of what I stood for, that gritty side. And I always say that I was born with grit and pray for grace. But it just felt over time, it just didn't feel like the right way. There was times where I'd be dealing with some of my agriculture clients or my farmers, or somebody in, another client in another industry. And I was like, oh, I wish I could bring that up. But I had established Grit and Grace to be more of a mindset, energy, personal development, professional development kind of platform. And so I didn't know where this fit in. Like, can I talk about inventory management on the farm while talking about mindset? I mean, the Rural Way here is going to also have some of those lifestyle components, but it is a rural focused podcast that addresses the successes, failures, challenges, opportunities of what it's like to do business in the rural and remote landscape, small towns, farms, ranches, remote communities, um, any place that is outside of an urban area that has unique challenges that other people maybe don't relate to, or sometimes we just have a different lens. We have a different worldview. We have a different lens on the landscape of business. And so I really wanted to start this. And I started looking around a little bit ago to say what could I do? And I had many different names, what I could call this podcast. And I didn't want it to be just about farming. I didn't want it to just be about like small town. I didn't want to call it that. So then when all of a sudden it was like the Rural Way, because that's really what it is. We do business, we do life, we do all the things the Rural Way. And it's a unique way, and it's a way that we don't need to apologize for. And so that's what this is about. I'm excited to have some conversations. If you have been here for a while, in the Grit and Grace podcast, you know that all my episodes were solo. I always just did straight to mic and I edited and did it all myself. This is going to be a little bit different in a number of ways. Number one is there's obviously the video here. And number two is I'm going to have guests. I'm going to be interviewing and exploring different topics and having different conversations. So I really want to showcase who's doing it well in different areas with different businesses. I want to hear their story. I want to learn from their trials and from their successes. I just want to hear from them. And I think that you do too. You want to hear, how is so and so doing it in another town, in another area? What are the success factors? How do we do this differently and create success in our landscape? So it's this podcast is really dedicated and going to be specifically for you, those of you in a rural and remote town on a farm in North America. And so I plan to have this reach out to all of Canada and the US, and wherever there's a rural community that needs to maybe do business a little bit different. So, in this podcast, we're going to talk about business, agriculture, lifestyle, sometimes sports, sometimes parenting and raising kids in rural landscapes, because we know our farm kids are raised a little different and they have a little different worldview. And I want to make sure that we capture that, have those conversations, and come together in those, just in how we see the world and some of our unique challenges that other people don't understand. A little bit about me. Why did I decide to do this podcast? How do I feel about the rural landscape? So, first of all, my name's Tracy Schira-Parker. I am married to a farmer, and I've got 4 children, ages 17 to 24. And all of them were very competitive into elite sports. Due to our location, I spent a lot of time in a vehicle running kids. So I'm a CPA, a CMA, and I'm a certified coach, a certified leadership, and a certified resilience coach. So that mindset piece is really important to me. And I guess when it comes to the rural way, here's one of the things. So I started my consulting business. I worked for a lender, and I was a commercial lender. And at some point I knew I didn't want to do that forever because they were changing our adjudication and they were changing the rules. And I just said, "Eesh, this doesn't feel like it didn't feel good anymore. I didn't like it. I didn't like the process. I didn't like anything about it." So I said, "Well, why don't I get my certified financial planner?" And I applied to get the education, and they denied me, and they said I was already overqualified for my job. So I knew that was the universe saying, like, it's time for you to move on and to find something that's a little more challenging. The problem was I was expecting baby number 2. I was living in the middle of nowhere, and I was like, well, now what do I do? So I thought, well, why don't I just start consulting? I was 30 years old. I didn't know that females with little kids don't start their own consulting business in rural Saskatchewan. So it was a bit of a challenge, not only just logistically, but there was some challenges in regards to mindset because everybody told me I was crazy. Everybody said that that's never going to work. Nobody's going to hire you. What are they even going to hire you for? And my attitude at that time was, I don't know, but there has to be somebody somewhere that needs a consultant. And I don't need everybody. I just need a few. And that's what I kept telling myself. I don't need a lot of contracts. I just need a few. So in those early years, it was kind of chaotic. I did a lot of work with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, with the Canadian Farm Business Advisory Service and all of those egg pieces. And I did bookkeeping and all kinds of stuff just to keep me rolling. Eventually, I ended up having the other 2 and did it all while I was consulting. And along the way, so the story I'm about to share with you was kind of a pivotal moment for me. And something that has stuck with me forever and part of the reason why I'm doing this. I was working on a project in Saskatoon, and this male consultant was there, and we were talking about, women living in rural Saskatchewan. He came from rural, and he was with somebody that was outside of the city, and there was some challenges in regards to just having to drive back and forth for these meetings and small kids and all the things. And he said, I think that in rural Saskatchewan, we have so many women who are educated and skilled and have so much potential. And then he said something that really just, I don't know why it bothered me or stuck with me so much, but he said, it seems to me that when an educated woman goes to small town, that's where she goes for her big dreams to die. He said, women that are educated go to school with lots of big dreams, And when they decide to move to small town, that's when their dreams decide or go to die. And I thought, I will not be one of them. I will not be one of them. Now, it's been a challenge because there are challenges with logistics and contracts and access and all the things, but it doesn't have to be that way. And especially now with Zoom and YouTube. When I started consulting, there was uh, very little internet. There was the dial up, the screechy, crackly thing in the wall. There was no cell phones really. I guess cell phones were coming out, but we didn't have texting or social media or anything like that. So the landscape for business has changed a lot. And I really do believe that there's a lot of people in rural communities that are right on the edge of a lot of success. And we just need to band together to support each other, to have different conversations, to share our wins, and support each other through our losses and challenges, and just elevate the conversation and elevate our expectations. Yeah, so that's why I have created the Rural Way. And I'm really excited for this podcast. I think it's going to be a really good platform. Ever since I decided that, because at first I was like, well, do I have two podcasts? Do I have one? What does it look like? And once I dialed in and said the Rural Way, and I can capture all of that. So you will also get some parts of like lifestyle and holistic living and wellness, because that's what I'm passionate about. And I know that there's a lot of you that live in rural communities that are doing more of a holistic lifestyle, that your wellness routine and your fitness routine and your health and wellness lens is very holistic. Is you're looking at how do I do things with the resources in my vicinity. And so I want to talk about that. Back in the late 90s, which ages me terribly, but I took a whole bunch of holistic healing classes like aromatherapy and reflexology and herbology and crystal healing, all the things. So you're going to hear a little woo woo in there too. I'm sure that you already picked up on that. Back then, nobody was doing any of that. People thought the aromatherapy oils that was way before Young Living or anything like that. So I have 30 years just about of experience using holistic modalities and integrating them into meditation and mindfulness and mental health and all the things. So you'll see bits of that as well in this podcast and in the conversations we have. So a little bit about, you might be wondering, like, who have I worked with? What's my expertise? Do I fit in here? And so the place I serve, because I had to do a lot of, like, when I decided to do the Rural Way, I had to sit back and go, like, what am I going to represent and what sides? Because I do have a number of different lenses I could show up from a podcast perspective, like Grit and Grace. And I really want to blend all of it together, because I think that when we talk about finances, I mean, rural culture and the scarcity mentality around finances and money is something we're going to be digging into for sure. But there's also those aspects of helping entrepreneurs understand their numbers, their finance and their business game from a different perspective, making sure that you guys are all well equipped on how to talk to your banker and how to know your numbers, and making sure that you're negotiating from this fair place. So just to give you a little sneak peek, or not sneak peek, but a little behind the scenes as to what I've done and where my expertise lies. So primarily where I fit in best, the rooms, I'll say it this way. The rooms that I feel most comfortable in are the rooms filled with people who are the blue collar, roll your sleeves up kind of people, the people in agriculture and ranching, the people that are in, I've done lots of work in like aggregate and trucking and concrete and construction. And I worked in a construction company as a CFO, and I was the only woman by a long shot. And um, that was interesting, getting men to listen. But I've been in a lot of those rooms where it's male dominated industries and that blue collar perspective. And so that's probably the best rooms for me. I've been a CEO for a ECDev Corp. I've started an ECDev local corporation, and So I've done a lot of studying as well as what does leadership, governance, and economic development look like, feel like? What are the best practices in the rural landscape? Because it is different. The rural landscape is very different from an economic development lens than an urban place. So I've done a lot of different things. Right now, I'm doing lots of strategic planning, lots of governance training. So I've got a wide range of things, but here I want to talk about how do we do this in the best way possible without playing small and being the best kept secret? Because here's a fact: there are a lot of people in the rural landscape that have the best kept secret in business. And if you are wanting to grow, if you are a female entrepreneur that wants to break out of that small part of your business and want to really grow and expand, if you're wanting to break free from status quo, but you have absolutely nobody in your social circle that gets you because, let's face it. Most of us entrepreneurs located in rural locations, we're probably one of a few entrepreneurs that have that real true entrepreneurial spirit. There our teacher or our peers are usually teachers and nurses. The odd one is, has another small business, but for the most part, that's who we are surrounded with. And that's nothing bad. It's just that when we have a conversation, we're interested in different things. We're reading different books. We're listening to different podcasts. We are watching different YouTube. Um, and so I remember when the kids were little, I had 2. I was big and pregnant with Bronson, and Tony Robbins was coming to Saskatoon, and I was in a playgroup, and I said, "Tony Robbins is coming in." I don't know if anybody even knew who he was. I don't think anybody else even knew, and I was so excited because again, I was a nerd, so I used to listen to many different, of his programs, the CDs. There may have been some cassettes in there. And I would listen to them faithfully and just absorb everything, and I had listened to all of his work. And so when I knew he was coming to Saskatoon, there was no way I wasn't going. So I canvassed, like, my friends, the people I knew, the people I thought that might be interested, not one person. So I was like, "Okay, fine. I'm going by myself." So I bought the VIP ticket. I went to Saskatoon. I was in, like, I think the 3rd row. I was huge and pregnant. So if you've ever been to Tony Robbins, he has you jumping up and down. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm having this. But we just, if you live in small town, you're probably doing things by yourself because there's nobody else around that really is interested in what you have to say or do. Uh, and it's not negative, it's just numbers. And so I think it's important for us to gather here. I really felt it was important for me to have a platform that was able to share and gather, and I'm really passionate about showing a new way and breaking some rules, and or I shouldn't say rules, like big R rules, but the small R rules, like the expectations and what is, culturally supposed to be expected of those of us who are farm wives. And I think that it's important that we have conversations and we talk to other women who have done it well. I also think it's time that we advocate for rural communities because it is my anticipation that, or my lens, that there's a lot of false information about what it looks like and feels like to be in a rural community. There's a lot of false information in regards to the agriculture sector, the agri-food. There's a lot of false information. And I think that there's this overall mindset that agriculture has not very many people, so they'll be easy to manipulate or easy to control. And so I'm really passionate about maintaining that, holding strong on that, and making sure that we have our eye on the horizon as to what's actually going on and how it's going to impact us as landowners and as producers. So that's going to be also a component of it. I believe in advocating, getting the right information, the accurate information, and having conversations, asking really good questions. So I plan to have some good people on here. I'm going to be going after trying to find people to interview that will be able to share with us some accurate information about different aspects. So that's what this is going to be about. And I think that it's time that we not apologize for living in rural. I know that it's interesting when I talk to people in a professional way. I do a lot of facilitating. So when I get in front of the room and I'm in front of 20, 30, 40 people, whatever it is, often when I say that I'm from small town and that I live in the middle of nowhere, I live 30 kilometers out of the location. And I get a lot of people that are like, oh, that surprises me. I thought you were from Saskatoon. And I'm like, no. So instantly I see that they look at me differently. They treat me a little differently. And it depends on where I'm at. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. But just the fact of where I am geographically located, it impacts perception for sure. So I want this platform, I want this community to be all about having the confidence and having the ability to go and stand on any stage and say where you're from and not feel like you have to shrink because you're not from some big city. And if you don't come from a small town and you've never come from a small town, you won't get that part of what that means. But if you do, you know what I'm talking about. So I think that wraps it up. So yeah, as I wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me in my first episode. I know that when I watch other podcasters, they always say, oh, when I look back at my first podcast, it's so cringe. And so maybe in 5 years, when I look back at this one, I'll be like, ugh. But for now, this is what I could do. It took a little bit to get my lighting right, to get my sound right. I hope that everything's set up properly. It was when you're doing anything for the first time, it's awkward, and I'm not sure if I'm hoping that everything is set up properly, but if not, I'm willing to suck in order to get better and to make sure that I serve you from a really authentic place. Because for those of you that don't know me and that you see this in the future, is that you're going to see what you get and get what you see. I'm not very, I'm not good at disguising how I feel about things. And I really just call it like it is. And so it's a blessing and a curse because I wish sometimes I could just like not give my true authentic perspective on things, but that's just not, God wired me in a certain way for certain reasons. So I guess that's why I'm here to share it all. So thank you so much for joining me on this first episode of The Rural Way. I will be looking for subscribes on YouTube because that's how they're going to promote me. So subscribe on YouTube. And if you don't follow me on social media, I'm under just my name, Tracy Schira-Parker. And I had something else. Oh, share it with a friend. So if you have a friend that lives in small town that is a business owner that you think might like this, please share it with them. And lastly is go into the show notes. I have a new group that's called The School. It's a school group, SKOOL. There's an app. It's Alex Hermosi's platform. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but I did not want to do a Facebook group because number one, it drops out in your algorithm and it's meaningless. Number two, it's very much a one-way conversation. And number three is I just feel like it's not a good fit for me anymore. So I wanted to have something that I was in control of, that nobody could shut down, nobody could manipulate. It was going to show up consistently. And school is like that. I'm still learning the ins and outs of it, but I'm really excited to have that because then we get to have some more in-depth conversations beyond the podcast in there. So for those of you that are interested, click on the link and go over into the school group and join. And I think that's it. Subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on the audio, and we will see you in the next and upcoming episodes of The Rural Way. Again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.